I got 2256 right there, which I guess is correct. And I could have told you that would happen. So the show I just tried to bring you, if you follow along, we're basically very, very how do I phrase this? We're harassed in a very targeted manner. There's a show called On Point with Alex Pearson. It's easy to remember. On, Ontario. This show's in Ontario. The one in the center of the universe, which is what China means in Chinese, is The Point. It's almost the same title, two different shows. We happen to sample both of them. And she's a female host. There's a female guest host this week. We've been bombarded for about half an hour now, just real close to half an hour, not being able to get online. Everything's working now perfectly, and that show's over. So over and over, we're going to go through this over and over and over and over and over and over. I am attempting to bring you something useful, and we are going to get bombarded every time I get anywhere near something useful, apparently. And that's supposed to make me go fuck off, because I'm supposed to be smart enough to foresee a threat. I'm dumb as rocks, so the more you harass me on the internet, the more I'm going to keep doing the same goddamn thing. You shouldn't talk about this stuff. Copy, paste. You mean this stuff? Bing. So, we got 3 minutes left till, hey, you know what? Let's try to bring up the Beijing hour. Let's see if this fucks up my router all of a sudden. This may or may not. It's a separate issue. Oh, work. Nice. Okay.
Only for my real niggas get that money. Late night cooking slow. Late night cooking blow. Late night cooking slow. Late night cooking blow. Night cooking slow. Late night cooking blow. Late night in the six in the mix with a brick of snow. Only for my real niggas get that money tax free. Daytime in the bins, 4 a.m. in the taxi. Only for my real niggas get that money tax free. Daytime in the bins, 4 a.m. in the taxi. Savage with my lavish having cigarettes and money addict. X5 automatic, Tech 9 automatic, stretch 9s, all that magic havoc for that cheap price. Street nice, static for your nose, you can't sleep right. Street life is complicated, Oka keep me compensated. Most of y'all is common haters. Shit stop, constant in my shit. Drop a ball, I made it back and from this rapping shit. Made a million traffic and running streets for them savages. Y'all exactly what averages, don't bite the hand that feed you. Niggas claiming they real, for real we don't believe you. See you, niggas get exposed like some silly hoes. Really though, I be busy grinding, I be eating blows. Flipping hoes, mixing with a spoon like some Cheerios. Smoking on a stereo, thorough bucks on Mario. Running over your barrio, turning corners real slow. Real though, put money on your head, get your big money. Late night cooking slow, late night cooking blow. Late night cooking slow, late night cooking blow. Late night cooking slow, late night cooking blow. Late night in the six in the mix with a brick of snow. Only for my real niggas get that money tax free. Daytime in the bins, 4 a.m. in the taxi. Only for my real.
$65 megabits per second, blah, 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 blah. China Plus.cri.cn. Let's see if we can make this work fast. That didn't even like my split there. And yes, it's a Huawei. Oh, I love this phone. I love this phone. You need to make exactly this same phone.
Get that money tax free. Daytime in the bins, 4 a.m. in the taxi. Late night pulling up to Mickey D's for plenty cheese. 4 a.m. drive through, eyes out for my enemies. 10 degrees below, 0 kilos on my inventory. Also next category, artists here in Apple Story. Bitches
Culture and entertainment, the Venice International Film Festival. Now the day's top stories. Chinese President Xi Jinping's unveiled a set of new measures, including a stock exchange in Beijing and exploring the development of demonstration zones to facilitate trade and services. He was addressing a summit of this year's China International Fair for Trade and Services. Cui Huayao has more.
With the theme towards digital future and service-driven development, this year's event has attracted over 10,000 companies from 153 countries and regions. They will be participating in both online and offline exhibitions. The number of Global 500 and industry-leading companies exceeded last year's inaugural event. Various activities will be held during the 6-day event, including over 100 forums for entrepreneurs, experts, and officials to discuss hot topics in the service trade. Organizers say that digital economy and carbon neutrality will be the main focus this year.
You flip
On top
burgers
of
and you
that,
flip
finance,
houses.
tourism, education,
You have
and
to stay
sports sectors
tuned.
will also be represented. President Xi said the event shows China's determination to promote high-level opening up and support global economic recovery.
We will open up at a higher level by implementing across the country a negative list for cross-border services trade, and by exploring the development of national demonstration zones for the innovative development of trading services. We will create more possibilities for cooperation by scaling up support for the growth of the services sector in Belt and Road partner countries, and by sharing China's technological achievements with the rest of the world.
Currently, the share of service trade accounts for nearly 56% of China's GDP. Imports and exports of services totaled over $360 billion
I
US
suppose
in
I
the
could
first
use
half
my
of the
cable
year,
to keep
up
this
almost
running, and then I can turn the
7%
lights on.
year-on-year. This is the second time China is hosting this event under the pandemic. Domestically, the service sector is now a strong pillar of the economy, but on a global level, trading services continues to lag
development
behind.
dynamic.
Organizers hope this event will bring more opportunities to companies, and more importantly, it will boost domestic and global economies.
That was Cui Huayao reporting. And for more, Zheng Tao spoke with Professor Joseph Mahoney at East China Normal University.
What role will the new Beijing Stock Exchange play
from
in
West
driving
Toronto.
economic growth?
This would be
My
China's
school was called
third stock
Contact High.
exchange,
No
the other
joke.
two in
It's a real
Shanghai
name.
and Shenzhen. And at this stage, it officially envisions 3 key objectives. First, serve as a type of specialty stock exchange that can be a home to a particular type of business. We can think of the example of NYSE versus NASDAQ, where the latter was previously home to tech-oriented stocks. In the case of the BSE, it will be a platform, it's said, for innovation-oriented SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. The second objective is reform what is currently known as the new third board, Beijing's existing equity exchange for SMEs. And the third objective is provide a mechanism for deepening financial supply-side structural reforms and improving capital market systems. Additionally, some analysts think this new exchange might also serve as a home for overseas listed companies, including Chinese companies currently listed in the U.S., Hong Kong,
And
London,
hey,
and
then you
elsewhere,
could pay out your
especially those
dividends
facing new
in
forms of scrutiny and
renminbi.
even delistings given difficult formulations.
And then I can
It
get
might
paid in
also
renminbi.
encourage
Oh,
other
this is
global
good. I
firms
want to
like
send straight to my
Tesla
Dutch bank
and
account,
Apple
dog.
consider listing in China, thereby increasing the reputation and power of the Chinese share market. And finally, it might help push back against some international criticisms that Beijing is no longer pro-investor or pro-business following recent regulations of China's tech and education sectors.
The president stressed the importance of services in the new development model. How can China's further opening up and its commitment in the services sector help with the world's economic recovery?
This announcement follows other recent developments. For example, adjusting the so-called negative list to allow more cross-border investment and participation in China's service market, as well as new commitments to increase support for service firms from BRI participating countries that are interested in entering China's service market. Furthermore, it's been announced that China will explore building national demonstration zones to promote innovative developments of China's service industries. And these new zones are described as relatively open areas where new developments can be explored and refined along with new policies in alignment with
And if you're a
China's
foreigner,
needs and
that's where you
international
better
standards
be,
before opening
with money
up
in your
further
pockets.
nationally. Overall, President Xi indicates these new policies would mean more international access to China's economy at a time when much of the world is still struggling to contain and recover from the pandemic. Meanwhile, China has, in contrast, been described as the first country to contain the Delta variant and is in the middle of an incredible year of economic growth.
And that was Professor Joseph Mahoney from East China Normal University on China's new measures to support trade in services. Authorities say the planned stock exchange in Beijing will better serve innovation-oriented small and medium-sized enterprises as the latest step of China's capital market reform. The statement by the China Securities Regulatory Commission comes after President Xi Jinping announced the decision to set up the exchange and build it into a primary platform serving innovation-oriented SMEs. The CSRC says the stock exchange will play a different role in China's capital market compared with the Shanghai and Shenzhen exchanges, while strengthening interconnectivity among them. Well, China, as a member of the World Trade Organization and one of the world's largest trading blocs, is expected to take the leadership role in redefining the infrastructure of global trade within the context of the WTO to enable the system to work for all parties, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. And with more, Ge and I spoke with Robin van Poyenbroek, the executive director of CIFTIS official partner, World Trade Centers Association.
How do you assess China's position in this realm of services trade?
Well, China's growth in the service trade has been very steady in the pre-pandemic era. China has been the second largest country in the trade services for the past 7 years, which is very consistent to China's position in the overall global trade. And let's not forget, China is now the second largest economy in the world, will most likely very soon be the largest economy in the world. So there is obviously a tremendous potential for China in the service trade. According to the World Bank and the OECD, the contribution of services to the overall economy around the world was about 74% in developed countries, while in China, this was about 60%. So this gives us an indication also how much growth opportunity there is.
Through the fair, how do you view China's relationship with the world in terms of economic connection and the financial cooperation today?
I would say that development, sort of in the rise of China, has lifted over 700 million people from poverty and improved the to open up, and also its accession to the World Trade Organization have also played, of course, critical roles in this development. And we're very pleased to see that China has made such a headways in multilateral and bilateral trade, which would further sort of integrate China's trade markets with the rest of the world. One thing I would add here, though, is that there is also a crisis if it comes to the global trade infrastructure. And this is one of those things where when we talk about crisis of globalization, many people around the world feel that the global trade infrastructure is not serving them, and especially small and medium enterprises. So I think all the trading blocs, the large trading blocs in the world, the United States, China, and Europe, really have to focus on stabilizing their trade relationships, because for companies, for people around the world, its stability is absolutely key here. And China, I think, as a member of WTO and as one of the largest trading blocs, has a very important role to play there and can take a leadership role in redefining this global trade infrastructure within the WTO context so that the system actually works for everyone.
I was the executive director of the World Trade Centers Association. Coming up, China-U.S. cooperation on climate and other issues.
Would you like to receive the latest news updates about China and the rest of the globe? Tune in to the Beijing Hour every weekday for the latest in politics, business, sports, and entertainment from a Chinese perspective. Subscribe to the Beijing Hour for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
10 minutes past the hour. Senior Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi has urged the United States to make efforts to bring bilateral ties back to the right track. Yang had a virtual meeting with visiting U.S. climate envoy John Kerry. The Chinese diplomat says the two countries can strengthen cooperation in a wide range of areas, such as climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, and economic recovery. He voiced hope that the two sides can act on their common interests. Kerry says the United States is willing to strengthen cooperation with China in a mutually respectful manner. Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng has highlighted the need for trust in China-U.S. climate cooperation during talks with the U.S. climate envoy. Su Yuting has more.
Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng has held talks with John Kerry, visiting U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. Han Zheng said China-U.S. cooperation on climate must be based on the foundations of the Paris Agreement. Han emphasized that addressing climate change is an important part of China-U.S. cooperation, which must be based on trust. noting China's
What about the
goal of
metric
cutting
system?
carbon dioxide emissions peak before 2030 and achieving carbon neutrality before 2060. He said China has always delivered on its words in addressing climate change. He called on the US to make joint communications and contributions to the global fight against the climate change, focusing on the implementation of the joint statement, addressing the climate crisis, and on the objectives and principles of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. For his part, Kerry said the US and China should maintain constructive engagement and jointly address global challenges. Kerry also said China has made tremendous efforts in addressing climate change. He said the US is willing to strengthen contact and communication with China, step up implementation of the Paris Agreement, and jointly address the threat of global climate change.
That was Su Yuting reporting. At least 22 people have been killed in the United States after the remnants of Hurricane Ida dropped record rainfall across parts of Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. Ida was the 5th largest hurricane in history. It triggered a first ever flood emergency for New York City and parts of Long Island. U.S. President Joe Biden says the recurring natural disasters show that the climate crisis is real.
Past few days of Hurricane Ida and the wildfires in the West and the unprecedented flash floods in New York and New Jersey is yet another reminder that these extreme storms and the climate crisis are here. We need to be much better prepared. We need to act.
Hurricane Ida had wreaked havoc along the Gulf Coast over the weekend before causing deadly flooding and tornadoes in the Northeast. It destroyed buildings and left more than 1 million homes without power in Louisiana. Natural disasters are a major challenge facing the world, causing loss of life and huge economic and social upheaval. A recent report by a UN body on climate change shows that the world has seen an uptick in extreme weather and that frequency and intensity of these events will likely continue to grow in the future. With more on this, I spoke to reporter Guayan. What are your major takeaways of the climate report?
Well, first, the emissions of greenhouse gases from human activities are responsible for nearly 1.1 degrees Celsius of global warming. Also, it found that over the next 20 years, the global average temperature is expected to reach or exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. The world's leading scientists have projected that in the coming decades, climate changes will increase in all regions, and there will be increasing heat waves and longer warm seasons.
What's the significance of the report?
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is deemed as the leading authority on climate change, has pulled expertise from over 60 countries to contribute to the report. It reinforces the evidence that climate change has worsened extreme weather. The new report has been delivered at a time when extreme weather has come to weigh on the minds of the public in many regions around the globe. As a raft of devastating weather events scatter many places, including China, Brazil, the United States, and some European countries this summer. It warns that we all should keep alert and take actions to minimize climate hazards as much as possible.
Speaking of the increased frequency of extreme weather events, exactly what's happened over the past few months?
This summer, torrential rain slashed swaths of China, including Sichuan province in the southwest and the provinces of Henan and Hunan in the central part of the country. Zhengzhou in Henan province has gone through a fresh round of torrential rainfall just 1 month after a deadly downpour, which was the heaviest in the city's recorded history, killed nearly 300 people. The devastating flash flood on July the 20th caused river and sewage systems to overflow. Many residents of the city were stranded at home, and pedestrians were spotted holding together to plow through shoulder-high torrents. Local resident Li Ruotong recorded the scene from her apartment near a key traffic tunnel.
At first, there were several pedestrians when the rainfall hit the road. Later, the road was almost empty. The cars struggled to move ahead very slowly with high beams on. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, all the buses almost stalled. Some kind-hearted residents brought hand probes for those who got stranded in water.
Record-shattering rainfall not only hit Asian countries, but also lashed the other side
That's
of
a
the globe.
24-hour clock
Tropical
face.
storm Henri pummeled communities on the east coast of North America, with torrential rain hitting Rhode Island, knocking out power to tens of thousands of homes. It also caused flash flooding from New Jersey to Massachusetts, and catastrophic flooding in Tennessee left at least 20 dead, and Central Park in New York
24 hours.
recording nearly 50 millimeters of rainfall
Amazing
within an
hours,
hour,
every
the strongest
every hour,
downpour
all
recorded since World War II. Residents up and down the coast prepare for the worst.
I am a little surprised with
Now,
this tropical
that's an important
storm,
date
Henry.
in Chinese history.
It came really quick. It came quick and passed faster than normal. So we had some high winds. You could see some trees bending. I'm really surprised at how sunny it is right now. We're really lucky. I was 6 years old, Hurricane Bob.
The storm came just a month after tropical storm Elsa brought heavy rain to Florida. While the East Coast has suffered from heavy rains, the West has been ravaged by scorching heat waves. A dozen large California wildfires have destroyed hundreds of homes and forced thousands of people to flee. Chief Tom Porter of CAL FIRE said wildfires at this scale are rarely seen.
Today, we are almost 3 times the number of acres burned in California over our 5-year average, almost 3 times over. A lot of acreage is burning. Fires are burning in ways that nobody has seen before.
Elsewhere, a catastrophic flood left about 180 people dead in Germany and neighboring countries, while the worst drought in the century battered southern Brazil in June. Experts say rainfall has become more concentrated over shorter periods of time, while droughts are lasting longer. A senior researcher of the Brazilian National Institute for Space Research said the trend that manifested itself over the past decade will sustain into the future.
It is happening in front of our eyes, and it will last for years. All the prediction models show that the central and northeast will become drier. This is a problem.
Some scientists have warned that we should be on high alert over the increased intensity of wild weather and adapt to the new normal.
What's behind the increased frequency of extreme weather events?
According to studies by several research teams and the IPCC report, the correlation between climate change and extreme weather has become more evident. Dan Lent is co-author of the IPCC Climate Change Report and professor of climate science at the University of Bristol. He said we might see more abnormal weather events with a change in the climate system.
What is a tipping point? Well, a tipping point is defined as something that is a critical threshold, if you like, perhaps beyond which the climate system is going to reorganize in some way. We'll see the climate system behaving in a very different way from what it was before.
Some scientists say climate change has made the West in the US warmer and drier in the past 30 years and will continue to make the weather more extreme and wildfires more destructive. And a group of scientists from World Weather Attribution said that as temperatures rise further, Western and Central Europe will be exposed to increasing extreme downpours.
Is there any way to reverse the trend?
The IPCC reports that strong and sustained reductions in carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gases will limit climate change. I've done multiple reports on green development over the past 2 years, and I've found that major economies around the world have been beefing up efforts to cut carbon emissions and develop renewable energies. But these efforts take time to get long-term results. There's no magic wand when it comes to curbing climate change whatsoever.
What immediate actions can we take to reduce the devastating impacts from extreme weather?
I've interviewed some experts on disaster risk management and meteorology. They say it's critical to take precautions ahead of time. Emergency management and sound disaster relief plans are paramount at a time when abnormal weather events happen so often. And it's important to raise the public awareness about climate hazards. This is especially important in large cities.
We saw that unprecedented rainfall is posing new challenges to big cities. What can they do to withstand extreme downpours?
Senior engineers and urban management experts say that facilities in big cities, especially those in inland areas, were not built to resist extreme downpours that happen perhaps once in 100 years.
No,
in most
that's
cases, urban infrastructure pieces that are up to the national standard are designed to respond to floods in normal years. For instance, the deadly downpour that pummeled Zhengzhou in July brought a year's precipitation in one day. Senior engineer Wang Jiazhuo at the China Academy of Urban Planning and Design suggests that had overwhelmed the city's waterworks.
The rainfall that occurred in Zhengzhou is different from any that happened in history. The precipitation in an hour was mind-boggling, exceeding 200 millimeters per hour, far beyond the standard capacity of our water facilities. According to the national standard, the COG system